I'd like to kick us off with a preview of the experts who will be joining me today. OneGoal is incredibly lucky to be able to engage with these amazing individuals. Please help me in welcoming Laura Tucker, the Director of CTE Grant Administration and Monitoring with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education, and Mel Coriel, who is the Executive Director of Postsecondary Readiness with Indianapolis Public Schools. I am excited about the opportunity to learn and engage with these brilliant people who have generously agreed to share their time and knowledge with us today. So today's topic is innovative district models for post-secondary success. That means that you are in for a treat to hear about the innovative approaches to post-secondary readiness that's happening in Indiana at the Indianapolis Public Schools, and also statewide initiatives that strengthen underlying conditions, data systems, and flexible student-centered pathways that's happening across the state of Indiana and being led by the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. So before we jump into district models for post-secondary success, I'm going to start us off with a quick overview of OneGoal. Public school students receive on average only about 38 minutes of college admissions advice from their guidance counselors. This is not what we're talking about when we think about students just scheduling for classes or making schedule changes or anything like that, but this is that direct time that they have with a professional who can actually give them real college and career information. And frankly, this brief amount of time is insufficient for young people navigating a process that is complex and challenging, especially for students from under-resourced communities. It's clear to us at OneGoal that students need much more support to successfully manage their post-secondary journey. And that's the reason why we have our vision, which is OneGoal's vision is that every student will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspirations. And that is incredibly important given that only 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree compared to 67% of their peers from high-income areas, which means that we have to do more. Our mission right now is to lead the movement to transform post-secondary advising and support. And we're doing that with the work that we do in communities. We work in communities across the country, primarily through two types of partnerships. First, our direct impact model is a daily class for high school juniors and seniors with an extra year of support during the transition to post-secondary education. Just like math and English are taught during the school day, we believe post-secondary planning must be taught with equal rigor and that teachers and school staff can be supported to effectively deliver that knowledge. And then second, our OneGoal Leadership Network is a program that provides expert coaching and a community of practice for school and district leaders. We help them build and strengthen the systems and structures that will lead to increased post-secondary outcomes and close equity gaps for their students. We know that post-secondary work is often siloed into the counseling office, and this work allows us to create a holistic and district-level approach to post-secondary readiness. This year, we'll reach over 87,000 students indirectly through the OneGoal Leadership Network. And we'll have 275 district and school leaders participating in OneGoal Leadership Network across 57 partners and in 7 states. So we're doing a lot of impact. We want to make sure that if you want to learn more about OneGoal, what OneGoal is doing, please visit our website. And we're going to encourage you to stay engaged with us, seeing what webinars we have and what additional resources and tools that we can share with you as well. We are going to drop that link in the chat in just a moment. So now that you learned just a little bit more about OneGoal, I want to get us into today's conversation. And we want to make sure this session addresses your interests and encourages learning and engagement. All right, I want to get into some data, a quick graph with you all. Over the last few years, college enrollment among high school graduates has been on a steady decline, with less than half of graduates from low-income schools enrolling in a 2-year or 4-year institution. Districts have an opportunity here to address post-secondary readiness among their students. With the right knowledge and skill development, all school leaders can play a pivotal role in promoting college and career readiness. This again highlights the importance of the work that we provide to schools and district leaders. And this is also reflected in one of our most recent research briefs that OneGoal's experts in post-secondary readiness have compiled. It includes tools to develop strong school leaders. I encourage you all to take some time to read through this great document. It's created by some of our team members. I'll have to shout out John, Kayla, and Rachel. I know they were leading the work in this document. We are going to share the link in the chat right now for that. But again, just encouraging you all on how important it is to take those resources, dig into it, and share it with some of your school community as well. And I want to take a bit of time to just discuss how districts can better support students' post-secondary success. These 4 key strategies are critical to building a system that not only encourages, but ensures student success beyond high school. I can say that as a post-secondary leadership coach, I have personally supported work in all of these areas that are listed here on the screen right now. The first one, talking a little bit about centralized post-secondary support teams. With the centralized teams, students receive consistent guidance, which reduces confusion and ensures every student has access to quality post-secondary support. For example, I have supported multi-school districts that realize that their post-secondary guidance varied significantly across schools within their districts, where some students were getting a lot of attentions and while others were missing out on critical information and resources. I helped to aid some of the districts in creating more centralized post-secondary teams. We increased their post-secondary PD support and even served as an extra set of expert eyes to kind of ensure their new strategies that are implemented correctly within their district. And as a result, we're seeing more students receive the same high quality guidance and support, no matter which school they attended within their school district. Another piece is just around that data-driven decision-making. So when it comes to that, data-driven decision allows for schools to really personalize student support and allocate resources effectively, ensuring that those interventions are aligned with students' needs. One example in this is in our work is helping districts leverage National Student Clearinghouse data to help them really understand what happens to students when they leave high school. Oftentimes, districts don't know what happens to their students post-high school or how to visualize this data and really share it with leadership to make some real change. Myself and other post-secondary leadership coaches have been able to help districts understand and leverage this data and have seen positive outcomes like an increase in college and career staff, changes to their post-secondary goals that have taken quite some time to change, and also increases in summer melt support and resources. Another piece is strengthening those partnerships with higher education. Collaborating with those local colleges and universities strengthens the bridge between high school and post-secondary pathways. So partnerships can provide dual enrollment opportunities, college advising, and more exposure to campus resources. One example of this in our work is helping districts leverage partnerships with local community colleges. So many students, especially first-generation college-bound students, felt uncertain about their post-secondary options. And some schools we work with had limited resources to exposing students to college and career life. So we have supported them in building better relationships, and it has also encouraged those community colleges to open their doors for campus visits and workshops, and even more dual credit opportunities. So this has allowed students in different grade levels a chance to sit in on classes, be exposed to different career paths, and even access the college's resources as well. And then the last one is just by addressing underserved population, schools ensure that every student, regardless of their background, has some equitable access to post-secondary opportunities. I have shared some resources and given you a little bit of a lens into our direct work, but let's just take some time to learn more and explore some district-wide and statewide strategies with the help of our featured guests. So now I am going to introduce our first presenter, Mel Coriel, who is the Executive Director of Post-Secondary Readiness at Indianapolis Public Schools.
Thanks, Katisha. Hey, everyone. Happy to be here and to talk about some of the initiatives that we have in place in Indianapolis Public Schools related to post-secondary strategy and post-secondary readiness. We have really done some significant work in the last 3 to 4 years, especially. We reimagined our high schools in 2018 on an academies and pathways model, and since then have been working towards this vision that you can see on your screen, our IPS promise. Now we have OneGoal as a partner in this space. They're helping us launch our future centers, which I'll focus on here in a few minutes. And we're happy to have the partnership of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education You'll meet Laura here in a bit, and she'll talk more about some of the initiatives that they're supporting. So you can see here our IPS promise. This is one element of our portrait of a graduate. Around the outside, we want every student, each and every student in IPS, to achieve a fulfilling life that they choose. It matters to us that every student is served. It matters to us that every student has agency in what their path is and has the support that Katisha talked about earlier. And then you can see that we aim for all of our students to be thinkers, caring, communicators, balanced and reflective. And at the center of it all is the My IPS student experience. And our post-secondary readiness team is dedicated to ensuring, again, that each and every student has the experiences they need to be successful with that life that they choose, that post-secondary plan that they want to pursue. Next slide. So I want to talk today mostly about our future centers, because we have come to a point where we had a lot of different services that we were providing, a lot of programming, and we realized that we really needed to bring them all together under one unified umbrella to ensure that each and every student was served, that we had tiered supports for all students. And so our solution for this is the Future Center model. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of that model, mostly because I think that some of you may be in one of those stages that we were in before as well. So we, in about 2018, began with our Future Center model. We called that one 1.0. I'll talk about how we funded it here in a minute, but we had a counselor who was dedicated to college going culture. And then we also had a writing center specialist who was dedicated to getting that academic support for students. And we tried that model and we saw some flaws in it and we saw some strengths in it. And then we shifted to a model where we had a school-based associate and a community-based associate. So we had someone kind of focusing internally, someone focusing externally. And we learned things about what worked there and what didn't work. And then we landed on this third model, which has really been building on the outcomes that we had already begun to see, the increased positive outcomes that we'd begun to see from the first two versions of the Future Center. But as we designed this Future Center 3.0, which we launched this year, again, with the support of OneGoal, this slide tells us what some of the context was. And I know Laura will talk a little bit more about the state context when we get to her. But we have new state laws in Indiana over the last couple of years and still coming around some career discovery meetings that each student needs to have in a group of 5 or fewer students with someone who is a career employment organization-based person from out in the community. And each 11th and 12th grader has to have one of these meetings. We had pretty low FAFSA completion in the district as of 4 years ago. We also have, and then there's a state mandate now that all students must complete FAFSA in order to graduate or opt out through a process. We have required career fairs. We have the 21st Century Scholar Program where students who qualify can receive full tuition to a state university if they complete certain requirements. We have new graduation requirements coming next year and more. And then also, we are also grounded in, as I said before, continuing to improve with our student outcomes. We've seen an increase in enrollment in post-secondary training, an increase in interest in college in our district, an increased graduation rate as a result of our graduation on track, and an increase in work-based learning opportunities as a result of many initiatives around the state. Next slide. As I said, we started the Future Center 1.0 in 2018. We did that with a Lilly grant from Eli Lilly Foundation. Then we had ESSER funding that supported our Future Center 2.0 as our Lilly grant funding expired. And we really felt that by year 6 of this initiative, we should be able to sustain most or all of our Future Centers from within our recurring budgets. So our Future Center 3.0 is sustained by title funds, our student-based allocation, and a little bit of philanthropic funds, but we've built it so that if we didn't have the philanthropic funding stream, we could still maintain it. So what is our Future Center model? Next slide, please. So in addition to the existing student service personnel in each of our 4 district managed high schools, there is a Future Center, and in that Future Center are at least 1 post-secondary readiness counselor who's a trained counselor, school counselor, 1 college specialist, 1 work-based learning coordinator funded by Perkins, 1 career academy or career-related program coordinator, different title if they're in an IB school versus not an IB school, 1 writing center specialist funded by title, and 1 graduation coach who's working with graduation on track services. So we're now in a place where we have a center in each high school that houses at least one of each of these. And in our high school that's twice the size of the others, there are 2 of these, or 2 of most of these positions. And these folks work together. They're co-evaluated by the school-based staff and our post-secondary readiness staff. And we take a collaborative approach to ensuring that they really are serving each and every student. And we use multi-tiered, multi-domain systems of support. We're supported by the Hatching Results folks in defining those roles. So next slide. So you can see here what those roles are focused on. We have the school counselor, who is not in the Future Center, the regular school counselors, but they are working in concert with the Future Center, and they're also coordinated by our office. We have a post-secondary readiness, that college and career counselor who's working to increase that college-ready culture. The college specialist who really works with those 12th graders to ensure that they're completing FAFSA, that they are applying to school, that they don't melt out in the summer after their senior year. Work-based learning coordinators working with those career discovery meetings for all students, working specifically with our career and technical ed students on their work-based learning as well. The writing specialist, we feel that this is really sort of an often overlooked way that post-secondary readiness teams can support students. We found that we had created lovely systems for advanced academics and career and technical education pathways in our schools, but that our students weren't quite prepared for the rigor of that work. And so we piloted a college-style writing center at one of our high schools at the end of our first Future Center 1.0 implementation, and it was highly successful. So we replicated that so that each of the 4 high school campuses has college students, in some cases peer tutors, volunteer tutors through a partnership with the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library, who come in and meet one-on-one with students to help them with their assignments. And they are trained, these tutors are trained as tutors. So they're helping in the same way that a college tutor would if you were a college student who showed up to your writing center. And then finally, our graduation coaches, who I mentioned earlier, who really focus on getting those rocks out of the way for graduation. So they are laser focused on each and every student in the graduating cohort. Next slide. And then here you can see, I know the print is probably small, but I'm sure you guys will have a copy of the slideshow at some point. But you can see our tiered supports and where those different roles fit in our big picture of how we're supporting each and every student with both their academics and their college and career needs. So you can see, again, that our grad coaches, for example, they're in pink, they're really working with those individual students and subgroups of students who are off track to graduate as of senior year. You can see that our work-based learning coordinators and our writing center specialists provide supports in all 3 tiers. Our college specialist is more focused in tier 2 and tier 3. And then our traditional school counselors are focused more in tier 1 and tier 2, delivering that tier 1 instruction and then supporting students towards their goals in subgroups. This does not mean that our counselors don't meet with students. They do meet with students. They do work through our Zello platform with students to ensure that they are supported in their goals, but we have these additional supports in the Future Centers. Next slide. So at this time, it is my honor to hand it over to Katisha.
Yes, thank you so much, Mel. This is some great information. And now I am going to ask Laura to join us um, and come to the stage. Laura Tucker, who is the Director of CTE Grant Administration and Monitoring with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here and talk about all of the great things happening at the Commission. Well, some of the great things. There are a lot of additional initiatives we have. I tried to condense it a little bit, or else we would be here all day, right? We have a lot of stuff happening, very exciting, but I thought it might be helpful just to give a very broad Indiana overview that might help give context to what Mel just presented. In general, it might be important to have a little background that Indiana has an incredibly robust concurrent enrollment population. And so over 200,000 high school students enrolled in post-secondary. I think there's only a couple of states doing more dual credit than us. And I think that included Texas and California. So they have many more students in population. So very exciting. We also should mention that we have a little bit of a differing, I think every state might use dual enrollment and dual credit. So just for the rest of my presentation, I thought it might be helpful to share that in Indiana, dual credit is college courses taken at the high school campus. Those are taught by a credentialed faculty member who is credentialed by the post-secondary partner. And then dual enrollment happens at the college campus. We do have college or dual enrollment occurring. I think our dual credit is quite a bit of that 200,000 number that I mentioned. And then I'll talk a little bit about funding in a minute. There's a little bit of an incentive, but dual credit courses have a max of $25 per credit hour. But dual enrollment, the institution can charge full tuition for those. So in addition to the number of students, a large portion of our community college enrollment is taking dual credit. So that really will speak to, in a couple of minutes, I'll talk about relationship building between higher ed and secondary, but the community college enrollments are quite large. Portion is high school students. And then a lot of our policies are very favorable. Next slide, please. Okay, and so we have a lot of our Secretary of Education. I will hopefully not steal her line, but she often uses blurring the lines between secondary and post-secondary, and there's a couple of ways in Indiana that happens, and I think one of those is really seamless transfer components. We have a core transfer library, a list of priority courses for that seamlessly transfer among institutions. That's really beneficial for our high school students who might be taking dual credit at a community college or through a community college, and then transferring that to a different location, right? They might be taking a dual credit course at Ivy Tech, but then transferring that to IU. And there's a really large list of courses where that transition is seamless. We have an Indiana College Core, which I'll talk about in more depth in a few minutes, so I'll skip over that for now. And then our CTE courses are also very much aligned to post-secondary certificates. And so that is really helpful. A large portion of the dual credit students are enrolled in CTE programs. We, with Perkins 5, we overhauled those and intentionally aligned each of them to a post-secondary path. And so students are able to get started or complete those credentials in high school. And then we have some 2+2s where a student can earn an associate's degree and transfer that entire 2 years to the baccalaureate program without losing any coursework along the way. So that's really essential to like streamlining the secondary to post-secondary move. And then a little bit additional information about the Indiana College Core. This was a 2012 legislative mandate. It is a block of 30 credit hours that are taken in general education and transferred seamlessly to all Indiana public institutions. And there are actually a few private institutions who have come on board to accept that as well. In general, this has the student completing their first year of gen ed requirements while in high school. And just this year, so it started in 2012, but just this last year, there is a new requirement for high schools to offer the Indiana College Core, submit an implementation to provide the Indiana College Core, or submit a feasibility report. There are some high schools where there are additional challenges to getting those 10 courses to students. And so this new mandate or new legislative rule has allowed us to kind of get some insight about what's happening with the challenges to expanding the core across the state. This slide's just a little bit of data about the core. Over 10,000 students have earned the ICC since creation. The number of schools who are offering it has really increased dramatically. In 2021, we were just at 84, and just most recently, I think the most recent number is even larger, but 264 Indiana high schools are able to offer their students those 30 college credits. That is pretty remarkable considering the often struggle to find a credentialed teacher. There's a lot of work happening at the local level. I don't know if during a Q&A, Mel might want to speak to a little bit of how that happened at IPS, but it is not easy to offer those 10 courses in high school. It takes a lot of relationship building with post-secondary partners, and sometimes work with other local high schools to just problem solve. So that is really an exciting number to share. And really the cost savings is remarkable. As you can imagine, the sticker price in Indiana for a public institution averages $22,000. And so, calculating those students who have earned the core, the savings has been over $225 million and growing. 92% of core owners or earners from the class of 2022 went to attend college. And so those data points are really important to keep track of, not only how are students who earn the core doing in college, but are they going, are they matriculating, and where are they, what are they pursuing after high school? Some incentives for dual credit. Public or post-secondary institutions do receive $50 per credit hour for the priority courses that they offer. And then secondary institutions in 2023, so this is a new thing, tuition support for completions. So students can earn their high school some additional funding based on the completion status that they have. So a student who earns an associate's degree, that high school will recoup $2,500 additional dollars. The ICC is $1,500, and then there's some extra funding for dual credit. Those are per student. So a student who earns an associate degree only provides the school the $2,500, even though they also earned the Indiana College Core and had additional dual credit courses. So you just get the highest amount of funding for that. And then there's a program called Crossing the Finish Line, which provides free college courses over the summer to near completers. So students who have two or three courses where they might need to take some of those over the summer, they can take those through our community college system for free. Another initiative that we are very proud of at the Commission is the 21st Century Scholars Program. This program is for eligible students, and previously they were applying in 7th or 8th grade if they met the requirements, and they had to complete some Scholar Success Program activities, and then after graduation they could receive up to a 4-year scholarship, 100% tuition at our public universities. 50,000 have earned a degree or credential using the 21st Century Scholarship. We have a large handful of staff at the Commission who were scholars, so we're very proud of that. And across all race and ethnicities, the data shows that scholars are more likely to go to college than their low-income peers. And that data point's important for us to know that some of the wraparound services, which we can talk about later, the wraparound services that are really provided to 21st century scholars in Indiana really work. They're intentional, and they are showing positive outcomes. I think that I need to be a little mindful of time. So there's some data there that you're welcome to review when you receive the slides, but we'll go ahead and go to the next one. So part of the 21st Century Scholars Program, and I think this connects well to what Mel was talking about, how they're kind of like using some of the commission to support what they're doing in their future centers. Each 21st Century Scholar is required to complete the Scholar Success Program. And on this slide, you'll see the activities required. So the students are now automatically enrolled. Previously, they had to apply, and really what that last slide said is really many students who were eligible for the program were not completing the application and therefore not enrolled. These are low-income students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. There are the target audience of who we would like to see getting access to college, and it was a free tuition. So the new initiative for auto enrollment has been really helpful. The numbers have been dramatically increased for who is enrolled in that program since an application is no longer required. But these 12 activities are exposure activities that the students are required to do over the course of their 4 years of high school. Many of them happen in the high school. So students aren't necessarily needing to go and search for scholarships on their own time a lot of times, and Mel could probably speak to what they do at IPS. I'm almost sure she would say yes, but a lot of that would happen in the high school to help scholars complete these activities. So these usually aren't extra outside of the local district activities, but they are helpful in exposing students to what happens after high school when they want to use that scholarship. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is also very brand new, Indiana pre-admissions. We had connected with a couple of other states who were doing this and thought this is something that we should participate in. Indiana high school seniors are pre-admitted based on cumulative GPA or SAT scores. And they do still need to apply. So this is not an admissions, but pre-admission, and then they would select a school from the list. So students receive a letter of the universities and institutions that they have been accepted to based on the data provided by their high school, and really allows students to see the potential in Indiana. The commission would like to see students remain in Indiana. We would want to retain them as Indiana residents and be employed here, and let them know that there's potential for post-secondary access to them in Indiana. So just a few data points. 39 public and private institutions did participate this year. 67,000 high school seniors received a letter. And so this was an opt-in program this year. The institutions had to opt in, and the high schools also had to opt in. And on average, students were admitted or pre-admitted to 24 campuses in Indiana. So when you talk about low access or low income students, disadvantaged students who sometimes, we probably all on the call would know, don't think they can or aren't sure they can, or maybe they're first generation, they aren't sure what that looks like. You could imagine receiving a letter that you've been accepted to 15, the following 15 schools in Indiana, should you choose to pursue that path after high school, is really exciting. So I think that was a general overview. Mel also mentioned the FAFSA completion requirements. Students are required with opt-out provisions to file the FAFSA. Really important that students access that federal financial aid and state financial aid. And so that is a new initiative. We're keeping track of the data on that as well.
Thank you, Laura. This is some really great information. It's just letting us know. And also thank you, Mel. You all shared some information. I know it was really quick, but it was really powerful. And I think it just states to the work that's happening in Indiana. And I also can say that I'm a 21st Century Scholar student myself. So I have experienced what 21st Century Scholars has done for people in Indiana. So again, wanted to thank you all for sharing that information. We're going to jump into our panel in just a second. I want to do one last thing here, is just get one last poll that's going to help us stay connected. So they're going to share a poll really quickly. If you could answer one quick question for us in that poll. Would you like to connect to learn more about OneGoal? Would love to hear more about what you all are thinking before we get ready to jump into our panel discussion. So just taking maybe 10 seconds or so to answer the question here. Looks like we're getting there. Take about 5 more seconds to answer our poll and see if you all want to learn a little bit more about OneGoal. And then now I want to welcome our friends back for our panel discussion. Again, please use the chat or the Zoom reactions to show some love as I invite Laura and Mel back to join me on screen again. Again, we're going to take probably about the next 15 minutes or so to just kind of have some conversation and just talk about what we learned today, and really encourage you all who are listening to put some questions there in the chat, and we'll see if we can answer some of those for you all as well. I have prepared a couple questions, but again, want to really encourage you all to share some questions in the chat and some thoughts as well, so we can voice those over while we're having this conversation. So Mel, I am going to just start with you. As the Executive Director of Post-Secondary Readiness at IPS, what has been your biggest win and challenge in the implementation of the Future Center? And what resources have you leveraged for support?
I think the biggest challenge in the implementation of the Future Centers is probably just aligning, because, and I've heard this from folks in other school districts, we have that tension between folks who report to central office and folks who report to the principal at the school. It's hard to balance that if you're an employee of something like a Future Center. And so we've worked really hard to gain the trust and the input of the school-based leaders so that we are really collaborating with them and hearing them rather than imposing things on them. And that's an answer that's about the bureaucracy, but it's really about students, because when folks are singing from the same page of music and they trust each other, we see better outcomes for our students. So I could cite, some of our key performance indicators that have really grown, that are very student-based, but I think that one of the main reasons they've grown is that alignment and that collaboration with school-based teams. So when I think about, we've grown from last year we had 2,825 dual credits earned. This year we had 5,195 dual credits earned. Next year, we hope to double that again as we really move into our implementation of advanced academic programs at every school. No way we could have done that without all of those folks working together.
That makes a whole bunch of sense here. And since we're talking about Future Center, I see that there is a question here in the chat. How many high schools in your district have Future Centers, and what is the school size in each of those?
Yeah, so we have 4 district managed high schools, and they each have a Future Center. And the school size is about, let's say, around 1,000 a school for 3 of the schools, and then around 2,000 students at the 4th school. And so that 4th school has more staff in their Future Center than the other 3 do. And I can see the question there too. Did the teams serve elementary and middle school students? So currently we only do this in high school with Future Centers, but we have added a middle school position on our team, which is the middle school director of academies and pathways. And we are seeking funding and exploring around having some sort of Future Center model in our middle schools. We just did a restructuring in our district. We used to have about 30 different schools that served middle schoolers. Now we have only 7 because we reconfigured our grade bands. So that we think is going to make it feasible for us to provide more aligned services in our middle school spaces.
Perfect. The staff in those centers, what is their roles? I see one more question here. The staff in those centers, what are their roles? And I know, Mel, you kind of went over some of those roles a little bit as well. I don't know if you want to answer more to that, or maybe it might support by sharing, once we share out the slide deck, it'll probably give you a little bit more detail because there are quite a few roles in the Future Center. But want to turn it to you, Mel, if you think you wanted to add anything to that.
Sure. And yeah, they are noted on the slideshow, as Katisha said. I can repeat them. There are 5 of them. So it's the PSR, Post-Secondary Readiness Counselor, the College Specialist, the Writing Center Specialist, the Graduation Coach, and the Work-Based Learning Coordinator. And, if your school has career and technical ed pathways, or your district does, then you have work-based learning coordinators that are funded by Perkins. That's the same role that exists within our Future Center. So we've leveraged, again, we've kind of brought under one umbrella some roles that we already had in schools, so that we're really, again, kind of singing from the same page.
Thank you so much, Mel, for answering that. Laura, I'm going to turn it to you really quickly to ask a question here. We see how statewide incentives and frameworks are tying into this. So such as those that you manage, supporting the local districts like IPS in building systems and enhancing student readiness in post-secondary education. How are you all implementing that in more of a statewide incentive and in a statewide framework?
Yeah, so the some of the framework is the same framework with some new initiative based, right? So like for example, that 21st Century Scholar Program is fairly long standing. However, in the last year, we've moved from students needing to apply to auto enroll. And so the impact of just that small change has been pretty tremendous. We don't have a really great counselor to student ratio in Indiana. I think at least 2 years ago we were 50th. So I don't know if we've made gains, but that can kind of share what load our counselors are taking. And just, from a previous counselor, less a state employee, but a previous counselor position, I was the one who was working with students to apply students to that program. I would try to track them in the halls and, hey, everybody should apply. I'm not sure who qualifies, and just try to get everybody an application in. And then students didn't get it in time, and then lost out on a really great opportunity, a life-changing opportunity for some. And so that one policy change, it is still new. We're still kind of tracking the impact data on that, but we have outreach coordinators on our K-12 strategy team, and they are regionally focused and based, and what maybe their previous duties were to enroll students and make sure students didn't get lost in that application shuffle. And now they're really able to focus on those 12 activities that I shared, and making sure that they keep their GPA up and they meet the other qualifications for the grant. So not necessarily a new framework, but really, just, I think, a barrier broken down, and additional access. And there's a variety of ways that the other initiatives have done that too. The pre-admissions, just telling a student that they can, and connecting them to those universities, and allowing universities to reach out and say like, hey, we would love to have you on our campus, please apply.
Yeah, I totally agree that the 21st century, the auto enrollment has been a really big game changer, especially as a past counselor in my past life as well. It was really difficult to get students to complete it, or get the parents to complete it. And having that auto enrollment, you had students who were becoming seniors and were like, I am a 21st century scholar. And then they had to go through appeals process, which was, a pain as well, for not only them, for also for the parents, and them losing out on a lot of that additional financial aid that they can get as a 21st century scholar. So
Yeah.
I think that
Too
was
many sad stories. It was an online form. I mean, to try to not get too, but it has really been a life-changing change for, I think, many, many students, maybe who didn't even know they qualified, wouldn't have applied because their parents were like, we probably don't qualify for that. And so just a variety of barriers that have been removed, and then allow the commission staff, who's kind of on the in the weeds of working with those students, they can turn their attention less to applying, and more to like that success component for that student.
Makes total sense. Mel, I wanted to ask you one more question. I know you talked a little bit about the increase in like the dual credit opportunities, the early college, especially with the changes that are happening within the state. And I know there are other people who are watching who may be in different states and are trying to build out dual credit and increase their early college programming. What are some of the challenges that your district may have faced as you implemented and increased your dual credit and early college programming?
Ooh, I think pretty much anybody who's asked this question will say that the challenges are many. We are forging new pathways in that space. Credentialing is a challenge in Indiana. In order to teach a dual credit course, a teacher has to have a master's degree in the content area, not in education, but in the actual content area, or 18 graduate credit hours in the content area on top of their, say, education master's degree. And so we leveraged some ESSER funds to do an effort of paying for teachers who are interested to attend graduate classes and get their credentials. And then we also did a paperwork lift there. So we worked closely with one of our college partners and with our HR team to just determine who we already had on our books who might qualify to teach dual credit. And so we were able to credential over 50 teachers through those efforts. Of course, keeping those teachers on board and teaching in our district is its own challenge. I think data sharing continues to be a challenge. We can't always see with some of our biggest dual credit partners how students are doing in the course. If it's, say, a dual enrollment course, we can't always see, what their grade is. We have to find better ways to streamline the data sharing between ourselves and universities. I think that something we often don't mention when we talk about the barriers to dual credit and dual enrollment programs is, efficacy. So we know from all of the meta research, right, that teacher efficacy and student efficacy are really some of the biggest levers we can flip when it comes to education. I think that's true in dual credit and dual enrollment programs as well. Teachers who don't believe their students can do the work, students who don't believe they are college material. And so a lot of the work that we do is actually with community partners, with folks who will mentor students in those spaces. So there's the lever of breaking down the barrier and creating the systems that students can work through, but there's also the lever of turning the hearts and minds of teachers and students towards this work.
It's almost like shifting that culture, changing the mindset a little bit that we're just dealing with in this place, in this space, and at this time right now. So I appreciate you giving all of those details, Mel. I think that, as you said, these challenges are not few and a lot that we have to work towards as a state and across the nation in terms of this type of work. In the interest of time, I want to make sure I ask one last question for the both of you. What advice would you give to other district and state leaders looking to implement similar post-secondary readiness strategies in their own schools or regions? And Mel, if you like, I would go ahead and start with you.
Sure. Collaborate and innovate and have thought partners at universities and in local organizations, partners like OneGoal, partners like the Commission for Higher Education. Have conversations that are direct and clear, and don't give up on your students. Don't just settle for the status quo. I'll talk about one more initiative that we're really proud of in IPS. It's an example of this. It's the Seamless Admissions Initiative at IU Indy. So our students not only benefit from what the CHE has done in terms of that seamless admissions initiative across the state, but also we worked with IU Indy to have them reduce the steps for application. And so when our students pre-qualify, our IPS students pre-qualify for their programs, our students only have to submit their proof of address, their cell phone number, and a few other pieces of information to complete their application at IU Indy. And then we're able to move on to the work of, instead of supporting filling out the application, getting them on campus. As we did yesterday, we had 200 of our seamless admits on the IU Indy campus yesterday, figuring out how they could see themselves there at that university. So that's one. And then also we've lifted middle school college visits for every year of middle school for every student. And we couldn't do that without having those hard conversations with colleges about like, hey, yeah, we do want to bring 400 middle schoolers onto your campus, in 2 days. We think this is important, and we're willing to help figure out what that could look like.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Laura, I'm going to give it to you now.
I probably initially would have responded exactly as Mel did. Relationships, not just relationships at the state level with locals, but also like the local districts and the relationships with higher ed. They don't speak the same language often. And the better the relationship, the more that those nuanced issues are understood. And so high school, there's things that are important to high schoolers that sometimes the post-secondary partner needs to know, right? We have something this Friday, they don't want to be in class, right? Like, so when you're talking dual credit, dual enrollment, there are just so much nuance that you have to work out with your post-secondary partner. And I think that response comes from my experience in the field, not at the state level. But the state level, I think my suggestions would be to not lose sight of what's happening at the local level. We create an ideal, what we want to happen, what the state has set for our agenda and what we dream of, and then really listening to what the field is saying are the barriers to those things happening, and then taking those to heart as initiatives are rolled out, and then tracking the data as initiatives are rolled out. And so I think I hopefully explained a little bit of about how data kind of helped make some adjustments to the commission's initiatives, and we will track data for those new ones moving into the future. And I'm sure a lot of conversations about how that's going for the state.
Perfect. Great answers. This has been a really great conversation. Again, I know we could probably have this conversation for another hour or so, but I want to thank you all so much for your time and sharing your work and your leadership. A huge gratitude to Mel and Laura for joining this conversation. But that's it for today's webinar. Thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us today. Again, please follow OneGoal on social media and visit our website to learn more about how we are working to transform post-secondary advising and support so that students can achieve their highest aspirations. And thank you all again.